Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning from whichever part of the world that you're connecting from. My name is Manish Shanwag from EIPM, the European Institute of Purchasing Management. And we will spend the next hour or so, 45 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A for the last few minutes. We're going to spend that time on talking about AI, artificial intelligence in procurement. Okay, there's my good friend and colleague, Eric, who is behind the scenes, who is managing this webinar on the technical front. If you have any questions or comments at any point of time, feel free to use the Q&A or the chat, and Eric will be moderating this. Okay, in terms of timing, as I said, we'll around 45 minutes, and then we leave some space and some time for Q&A at the end. Okay. All right, so let's start off. This is the agenda. This is what we will look at. We'll just have a quick introduction to AI. Then we will go into the core of the subject, which is AI in procurement. Okay, and then we'll look at, while we will understand what are the different areas of artificial intelligence services in procurement, we'll also look at how do we implement them in business. Okay. This is an important phase as well, because knowing is one thing. And of course, the idea is also to see if I want to start off looking at AI services in procurement, how do I go about it? Okay, so we're going to look at implementation. And then finally, we just conclude with a short summary and we'll open the floor for Q&A. Okay, that's the overall plan for the next 45 minutes, 1 hour. All right, so before we start, I'm just going to launch a short survey, and I would like you to respond to this short survey. Okay, the question, you'll see the question in a bit on your screen. Okay, so the question is, what comes to mind when you think of AI? Okay, so this is the question that you will see on your screen. Feel free to choose one or multiple. Okay, let's give a few seconds. Okay, very good. I can see some movement now on some responses. We'll wait for everyone to respond. All right, very good. $20 more. Go ahead. You can choose multiple answers. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop it now. You got a decent trend, let's say. Okay, there you go. I'm going to share the responses as well. Hold on a second. Okay, so let me share my screen again. Sorry. I picked up the top answers. And there you go. We'll see the result. Okay, so most of you have answered generative AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and so on and so forth. Great. So this is what comes to mind when you think of AI, right? In fact, all of these choices have a certain level of artificial intelligence in them. Okay, from machine learning and deep learning, and you have automation. There is always a debate whether robotic process automation, or RPA, is AI or not, but it has a certain very basic level of AI nonetheless. Then there is NLP, natural language processing. You have computer vision, right? Personal assistants or bots and so on and so forth. And then you have the most popular one, which is generative AI. which is making all the noise today about ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and so on and so forth, right? So all these are at some level have certain level of artificial intelligence. So let's start off with a quick introduction to what is AI. So what I did this morning was I asked ChatGPT, right, one of your popular answers, to create a definition for me. Okay, so I gave a certain prompt to limit the answer to 25 words and so on and so forth. And this is the answer that I got. Okay, so it talks about artificial intelligence as a simulation of human intelligence processes, okay, by machines, notably computer systems, which includes learning, reasoning, and self-correction. Okay, so as a summary, it's a simulation of human intelligence. Okay, let's keep that in mind for a few moments, and then we will see when we see the applications, we will see multiple usages of how human intelligence is simulated. Okay, so the journey of AI is not very recent. It's in fact, if you see the two scales, the timelines at the bottom of your screen, we have the first digital computers that were built in the 1940s, right? So it's been almost 8 decades and more. Then we would have the first microprocessor in the 70s, and then the first iPhone in 2007, and so on. And that's the timeline of the evolution of the machines. At the same time, AI is also not a very recent phenomena. The first traces of AI can be tracked back to 1950, where there was Theseus, a robotic mouse that could navigate a simple maze and remember its course, right? So it was at some level trying to simulate certain level of human intelligence, navigating through a maze, even though it may not have been easy, but navigating through a maze and then trying to remember its course. Okay, so there was a little bit of learning and there was a little bit of repetition as well. Okay, and of course, now that has evolved over the past few years to see that we have much more competent, much more systems which are much more closer to human intelligence. Okay, so the evolution you can see over the last 8 decades. There is another graph here that you can see. Now, it's not very legible. That's not a problem. But on the y-axis, roughly on the graph on the left, you see the computational power that has been increasing exponentially, all right, over the years. And on the right, you can see a cluster, a crowding of certain dots. Now, you don't need to look at it each and every one in detail, but the point here is to tell you that there have been absolutely rapid changes in the past 5-6 years, okay, in the field of artificial intelligence. And over the 8 decades that it has risen, the last decade has been where the activity is the most frenetic. Okay, so there you see DAL-E, you have GPT, Copilot, Gemini. These are some of the generative AI tools that you have already chosen in your survey. You can see that there's rapidly changing landscape. There are more and more businesses who are not afraid to experiment with AI. Okay, and the early results on the investment are encouraging. Now, we'll talk about the investment and the costs about it of implementing AI in a bit, but the early results have been encouraging. Okay, yeah, and there are some numbers to support that. So the takeaway from this is there has been a lot of activity over the past 5 or 6 years where there have been rapid changes in the field of AI. Okay, so that was just a quick introduction of AI. Then we'll go to AI in procurement. Okay, more so, which is the core of the content. I have just tried to highlight. This is a process graph that we use at EIPM as well with all our clients. We have just mapped it on very simple 6-step process, starting from demand, supply, then you have strategy. So we talk about the first 2 macroeconomic forces that govern that govern business: demand and supply. Once we know demand, once we know supply, we could come up with a strategy, right? In procurement, and then the first 3 steps, what we call are the upstream steps. And some companies refer to them as plan to strategy, some others as planning, and so on, right? The second half of this process is the downstream part. which is also called source to contract. So we source our suppliers, we send out RFI, RFPs, RFQs, and then we select these suppliers into a panel, build a portfolio, and then work with some of them to create our action and buy stuff from them effectively, right? Which is purchasing, sourcing, source to contract or downstream. Now, there's other part to it, which is called procure to pay, P2P, right? Which is converting purchase requests to purchase orders, sending it across to our suppliers receiving them, delivering the goods. We have goods receipts, they send invoice along with that, and then we process the invoice and then we pay. So this is a very classical, very operational procure to pay process. Okay, so this is an overall mapping, let's say a macro view of a classical procurement process. Okay, so at this stage, I would like to ask you a short question again. So let me just launch. It's a word cloud that I want to launch. Okay, I'm going to do that right now. Okay, and this one is in case of, I mean, what do you think? Okay, what do you think are the areas of procurement? Now you have seen that map. What do you think are the areas of procurement that can use the services of AI according to you? Okay, we have seen downstream processes and upstream processes and the more operational procure to pay processes, right? So according to you, what do you think are the areas in this process where you could use the services of AI? So I'm going to launch this and let's see. Just try and use one word, okay, if possible, or two words maximum maybe, so that we can create a word cloud. All right, starting now. So you'll get that on your screen. Feel free to type in your response. Okay, very good. Please go ahead. You can type in your response. I can see a few now, P2P, contracting, very good. Okay, go ahead. Okay, thank you, Bernardo. I saw your response in the chat, but you could use the poll directly. All right. Okay, very good. Thank you, Yasin. Yeah, P2P, please use the chat, the word cloud. Okay, very good. So I'm just going to give a few seconds more and then we can stop the survey. Okay, very good. So we have got quite a few responses. I'm going to stop the survey. There you go. And then share the results with you. Let's see what we got. Interesting. There you go. There you go. So, I mean, the most popular answer is P2P, so procure to pay process. The supplier analysis that we could do, yes, absolutely. Forecasting, RFQs, requests for quotations, data sets, we could work with AI on data sets. S2C, I would think that is source to contract, yes. Absolutely, a lot about reporting and on the demand side and supplier selection as well. Very good. And P2P, of course, is on the more operational side where we can see a lot of AI services being deployed. All right, excellent. So all these areas are definitely the candidates where you could use the services of AI. And I've just mapped on a few. So let's look at a few examples and case studies where we see the applications of AI in procurement, right? So we have seen the same graph before. On the demand side, we could use AI services to improve forecast. Okay. On the supply side, we could get market insights by applying AI there. On the category, the AI can help you to come up with sourcing strategies. There are cost savings opportunities during sourcing. with the right kind of cost breakdown and total cost of ownership approaches. Then you have faster response time right in the process of RFI, RFQ, RFX, let's say. You can get faster response times. Contract lifecycle management is one thing. I think I didn't see that, but contract lifecycle management is one area where we have a lot of applications of AI as well. And then, as most of you recognized, yes, P2P, you have invoice processing, payments, accounts payable processing, and so on and so forth. So there are plenty of areas here where you see a lot of application. So this is linked to the process that we have seen. Having said that, there are other areas as well where you can see the application of AI in procurement. So this is spend classification, right? Or spend analytics. So somebody said data sets, right? So here when we talk about spend, there could be plenty of data available there. And there, the more the data available, the more the right data, the availability of the right data, the more application that we can see of using AI. Then you have supplier risk management. There are some specific companies who have AI tools purely focusing on risk. There is error detection. Very simple case. Let's say you have raised a purchase order and you get an invoice and you have to match the purchase order to the invoice, right? AI could detect errors and eventually launch a process to fix them. You have global sourcing. We'll see that in a bit as well. E-strategic sourcing, tail spend management. When you have a classification of your procurement spend in A, B, and C, if you look at the C categories, you could do a lot in automatizing that process of managing the tail spend. Then you have guided buying. If you're a new buyer and you're not sure what kind of strategy you want to put in place, you give certain inputs, and the AI can spit out certain recommendations and guides that can help you to buy. There's inventory management, and of course, there are chatbots, which can be used for various purposes. Right. So you can see here there are plenty of transversal areas as well, not necessarily linked to the process that we have seen, but also other areas in which AI can be applied. Right. So having said that, I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on the important ones that I felt that I think would need a bit more highlighting. So I'm going to look at 6 such cases where we see the application of AI in procurement. The first one here is spend classification, right? I've worked with companies where there are sometimes hundreds, thousands, and over a year, sometimes 1 million unique transactions, right? More than that, right? That can build up a huge data set, right? AI can be used to automate the classification process and having the right categorization of these thousands of unique transactions. Okay, so you could do that, and with better data, you can hopefully make better decisions, right? So that the categorization, the putting of the data in the right buckets helps you a lot in organizing the data. You could also have varied and disparate spend data into an organized hierarchy. And in fact, that hierarchy can then flow through into your ERP systems and so on and so forth. So there's plenty of things that you could do around spend classification. Okay. Then we have global sourcing. So you could have, imagine a multinational company which has thousands of suppliers all over the world, right? And when you have a lot of data with they continuously buy with these suppliers, it can identify certain shifting global trends, right? And then it can give you recommendations based on your scenario planning. So a what if analysis. So what if I move my purchase from this supplier to another one halfway across the world in this particular country, and the AI can spit out all the risks associated with it and give you an end-to-end visibility in the supply chain. Right, so you can do scenario planning as well with this, and there are specific AI tools that can help you do that. Strategic sourcing, yeah, the bots. I just took one example of bots, which can be buying assistants. Right, they can do end-to-end e-auctions. I would have loved to have end-to-end e-auctions when I was a few years ago, and I was involved in doing a lot of e-auctions. Where in 45 minutes I had to sit, with the auction tool, work with our suppliers. Now imagine a bot doing this. You program, you give all the inputs, And at the end of 45 minutes, you have the result, hopefully a good one, and you don't have, there's no touch involved at all, right? So bots can do end-to-end e-auctions. Bots can also automate contract extensions. So if there's a contract, you have metadata of the contract, it can extract that metadata, look at maybe the expiry period, then launch an automatic renewal process with the supplier. Okay, bots can also negotiate end-to-end with suppliers completely. There was one case study that I was reading. It was one with a retail giant in the US, and they had put in a system in place where they had thousands of suppliers in the tail spend, right? Each with very small volume or value of transaction. And these bots from the buyer side negotiated price lists and catalog prices with these suppliers end to end in few minutes. And we're talking about thousands of suppliers like this. So imagine the efficiency and effectiveness that has increased. On top of that, on the other hand, as well, with the suppliers, sometimes the suppliers, some of the mature or let's say bigger suppliers also had bots. So in fact, at one point of time, there are two bots which are negotiating with each other on prices, and the end result is an updated price list or a catalog price for the particular item, right? So you could have this kind of end-to-end processes as well. In contract management, you could extract contract data and metadata, as I said. There is with OCR, which was there a few years ago. Now this OCR, optical character recognition technology, can be used to convert physical contracts to digital contracts, and then use the digital contracts and its metadata to take certain decisions. Then you have, of course, you could identify risk in the contract language itself, scan each and every clause, and see if there are any risks associated of ambiguity or whether the meaning is clear, and so on. Then you have supplier risk management. Since COVID, we have seen high focus on supply chain and supply risk management from a lot of companies. Want real-time data analysis, predictive analysis, and AI can help you understand those risks and improve visibility in the downstream supply chain. As I mentioned to you before, let's say if you have to move a purchase from one supplier to another one, so other side of the world, AI can give you certain potential disruptions that might happen with that visibility in mind. Okay, and it can reroute shipments and avoid delays and so on and so forth. And there are specific tools of AI which specialize in this particular field to do that. Right. And then the most popular one, the simple one, as we have seen before, invoice data processing and automated payment in the P2P process, right from the requisition to converting it to a PO, to then getting the invoice data, comparing invoice and PO, identifying and fixing errors, and finally verifying that data before the payment happens. Right. So this is there are some companies which give AI solutions specifically related to this topic. Okay, so I've seen some examples, but having said that, it is you can see AI is present in almost every step of the procurement process, the broad procurement process that we have painted here, and some transversal topics as well. Okay, and then we looked at some of the details of where these applications can happen. Okay, now having had a look on where are the applications of AI, the next step is to see how can I implement AI in business. Okay, that's an important point. Before we get inside the details, I would like to just highlight some of the myths and risks associated with implementing AI in business. Okay, some of the three primary myths that I noted was, number one, AI will take away my job. Okay, this is something that can be scary, and I get a lot of these questions whenever I'm doing some coachings or trainings. I get a lot of these questions from procurement people saying, Manish, will AI take away my job? Then, if I have to be honest, yes, there is a likely impact on some of the tactical roles that are low skilled and repetitive. And this is already what we are seeing in the industry. Okay. So if we are not upskilling ourselves and moving away from doing repetitive tasks and moving into slightly more tactical and operational tasks, tactical and strategic tasks, there is a risk that AI might impact your job. Okay. But the good news is if you can upskill yourself and move to a more strategic, AI can be extremely beneficial. It will only enhance your current procurement role and it's not going to replace, okay, unless you're doing a low skilled and repetitive job. Okay. So this is, let's say, there's a little bit of truth to it, but it again depends on how you move away from this low skilled and repetitive job so that you're AI safe, as they say. The second one is AI involves a lot of investment and a big learning curve. Uh, Again, in the beginning, the initial setup can be expensive for complex processes. I'm not going to throw some data here, but we've seen with some companies who are already implementing some AI in their systems, the initial setup cost can be slightly expensive, especially for complex processes. It also depends on how whether you buy a standard solution from the market, or you get into customization. So customization obviously is going to cost you a little bit more, right? So having said that, over the evolution of the application of AI in business, there are going to be marginal diminishing costs. Okay, so while the initial setup can be expensive for complex processes, there is eventually going to be diminishing costs of the application. Okay, that's the second one. And the third one is I get people saying, hey, it's better to wait for the technology to develop further. We saw the cluster previously, right? We saw the cluster in that slide where you see in the last 5-6 years, the crazy exponential development of technology in AI, that some people say, oh, is it better to wait for the technology to develop further? Now, I always respond by saying that the key is to leverage it correctly. As it is, the existing AI landscape is already making an impact on procurement efficiency and effectiveness. So take advantage of it. As the technology is developing, there'll be more and more avenues where you can apply. You could have eventually modifications done and so on and so forth, right? But to say that you need to wait, you might be late on jumping onto the bandwagon. Okay. Right. So these are some of the myths. There are also risks associated. Okay, this is something which is very important to understand. There could be risks associated with implementing AI. And the biggest risk that I find is the lack of knowledge. Okay, lack of knowledge. What is AI doing? And this lack of knowledge can bring out certain fears, right? So lack of knowledge is one of the biggest risks that I see. There are upfront costs that I mentioned in point two, the upfront costs, and there could be time delays, especially if it is a complex process. Then there could be ethical issues based on biased inputs, right? And this is a key point as well. The system or the tool will be as good as the inputs that you provide. And in fact, you can't expect garbage in, diamond out kind of, if you have garbage in, there's going to be garbage out most likely, right? So the kind of inputs that you provide inside the system the quality of inputs will determine the quality of outputs, right? There was one case study that I was reading a while ago, in 2015, I think it was, around 8 years ago. Amazon recruitment, HR had started to use AI in their recruitment process. And you could look it up for details, but I'm just going to give you a brief. And given the inputs and given all the data that they had of recruitment from previous years, right, which was fed into the AI system, the results were skewed on a gender bias. Okay, the results of picking the right candidates, etc., were skewed, and there was a big gender bias that could be seen. So Amazon had to stop that program, but it was again a case where the inputs controlled a lot of what the outputs were going to be. Okay, so there could be ethical issues around that as well. And then finally, of course, the human machine balance, how much of the inputs that you're going to provide, is done. It's how much of the work is to be done by the AI and how much of the work, the decisions that will be taken by humans. Okay, so that balance needs to be maintained. And if you depend completely 100% on AI, then the process and the system has to be put in such a way that you can completely depend on the AI. If not, there has to be human intervention, right? Largely speaking, if you look at all the typical, I'll try to make it simple. If you look at the inputs that get inside an AI, they are typically three, let's say three categories, big categories. One, information that is available on the internet, publicly available on the internet. That's a big part. Second is companies that can buy or license third-party information. And the third one is that the inputs that the humans that give in the system itself. These are largely the three inputs. There are other variants to it, but largely the three inputs. And if we manage those three inputs well, you will have a good quality of output as well. Okay, so these are some of the risks that we see with implementing AI. Okay, right. So we're just going to go into some of the prerequisites and a step-by-step process of implementing AI. So first of all, no business is small for implementing AI. Having said that, we have certain prerequisites. Okay, first one, data. It's a very important part. Do we have enough of the right kind of data? As I mentioned, you put in the right quality of data, you're going to get better results, right? So do we have enough of the right kind of data? That's the first question that you need to ask yourself. Then you need to come up with a case, right? What business case articulates the benefits for your organization? If I have enough data and I want to use this in my P2P process, that could be a good case. Or if I have enough data, I'm going to use this in my contracting process, or I have good enough data with the right inputs for my business. I'm going to put this, try to get information on market insights, right? So there has to be a certain business case that can articulate the benefits for your organization. And then the other decisions is on application. So you have data, you have the case, and then you have the application itself. Should you build the AI or buy the AI? How will the human machine collaboration work? How much inputs that we need to provide versus what is the task that you're going to that you're going to give to the AI, and so on. So the human machine collaboration also needs to be decided. Okay, so these are the certain prerequisites, and once we know the prerequisites, then we can go on to the next step of actually implementing AI in business. Given a couple of examples here, some of the most common business cases can be largely categorized in two areas. One area is applying the AI over certain data sets to identify new sources of value. Okay, let's say you have millions of transactions with you, right, in your company, and you want to apply AI over such a huge database to find out new sources of value, new opportunities, new suppliers, new risks. This is one of the business case. The other is more common today, is where we have AI that is used to make existing processes more efficient, like the P2P example or contract management, and so on and so forth, or using bots for negotiation to improve your time and efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, so you can see largely two most common types of business cases. All right, so we come to the last part now, where we talk about implementing the AI, and this is just a small guideline on a stepwise approach of how you can do it. Number one is training yourself in some basics of AI. As I said, the big risk is lack of knowledge, right? And you want to get rid of that risk first. So train yourself in some basics of AI. You need not be getting into too much technicalities of it. Personally, I'm not a software guy. I don't know a lot of the technicalities that can get in, but knowing what it does, what kind of inputs might lead to certain types of outputs, some basics about AI can help you, to have a good implementation later on. Second is identify tasks, right? Identify the simplest repetitive tasks in your business process. Okay, and then AI can help you to make these processes more efficient. The third step then is to have, of course, you need to choose the right, as I said before, data and task. This is again step 2 and step 3 is about data and task. To have the sufficient and right data. Okay, so you should have the sufficient right data and enough data from which it can interpret and learn as well. You could also provide inputs while it is learning. Then you have another choice, a decision to make, whether you want to buy a standard tool, AI software. I think if you're a beginner, I would recommend that buying a standard tool with not much of customization, right? As I said also before, the initial investment for a complex process and customization can be expensive. So you might want to look for a standard AI software if you're a beginner. If you want, you can bring in some external expertise, right, for consulting, or just a domain expert who can help you identify the right kind of tool. And many of the software providers also provide these kind of services. And then once we have identified whether you want to make or buy, as I said, buy if you're a beginner, or then you can go ahead and building your own AI system for your industry domain. And then looking at applying this software, whatever you choose, on the task that you have identified in step 2, right? Uh, in the beginning, avoid giving your AI complicated tasks. So I've given an example here. There's a narrow use case, which is categorizing procurement spend. If you have certain spends, categorize the procurement spend in certain buckets. This is a narrow case, simple case to implement with an AI. Whereas end-to-end contract negotiations for tail spend can be a complex process, right? So I would want to avoid using the second case of contract negotiations for tail spend. If I have to train the AI first, get people used to it, and so on and so forth, I would use a narrow case to begin with. Okay. And then you have then coming to the last, it's a review. You review and develop the AI with more human inputs. Yeah, so it's a continuous improvement process eventually. All right. So this is a short, let's say, guideline, step-by-step guideline which you could use to implement AI in business. There is one last point, which is the softer aspect. Now, if you look at the myths that I mentioned, the first myth that I always get is AI is going to take away my job. So people are very sensitive to this today, right? People are very sensitive. What will happen if AI takes over, right? The idea here is if you're in a leadership position, typically you have to have the right kind of communication, right? Communication saying that AI is going to augment and aid you and enhance your capabilities to make decisions rather than replacing you. The risk does exist, as I said before, if there are tasks which are low skilled and repetitive. But if you get your people and get yourself upskilled, yeah, then you are AI safe, as you'd say, right? So people sensitivity is important, upskilling is important, and the right kind of communication is there. So you have in some companies that I work with, we have a specific person who is assigned to this. I like the name here, so I picked it up. They're called digital ninjas. You know, a very fancy name, but basically these are people who would be taking care of this program of upskilling. They are the face, and they could have the right kind of communication internally within the organization with the right support from the procurement, right support from technical, and so on. They could look at the implementation. So you could have a particular role created with the person with those specific skills of understanding technology, understanding people, and then mixing them both for a good result to make the implementation smoother in business. Okay, right. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. So we looked at, I'm just going to make a short summary and then we can open the floor for Q&A. What we have seen in the beginning, we looked at the AI landscape over the years, right? And as some of you rightly identified, different areas in which we have AI. Most of you picked up ChatGPT and so, which is one type of AI, generative AI, but we have others, right? Which we mentioned about automation, computer vision. All this are also different types of AI. Rapid changes in the last 5-6 years. More and more businesses are not afraid to experiment with AI. A lot of investment going in there, and early results have been encouraging in improving efficiency and effectiveness both in procurement. Okay. Then we looked at the classical procurement process and the different phases in which each phase has a potential of using the services of AI. right, in the process. Then you have the P2P process, and we have seen some transversal blocks as well in spend management, error detection, chatbots, global sourcing, strategic sourcing, and so on, right? Every phase we have, and we elaborated 6 of these cases. And then we have seen the actual implementation of AI. There are certain myths and risks that you need to be aware of. And then looking at the implementation in business, how do we do that stepwise? Train yourself, as I said, looking at the right data, looking at the right case, and then choosing the right software, and then applying that on your task, on your case that you have identified. Okay, so this is the flow that we have seen in over the last half an hour or so, let's say. Okay, all right, so that was what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much for listening. And I would like to open the floor for any questions that you might have. Questions, queries, comments, complaints, hopefully not, but anything that you might want to provide as inputs. So AI is taking people's job as we speak. It is quite an actual risk. Yesin, I heard that comment. Yes, as I said, AI it's an actual risk, I agree. But again, as of today, with the low skilled and repetitive jobs, yes, it is. There is a risk there. I wouldn't deny that. Okay, absolutely, there is a risk, but it is up to us again as humans to move away and become AI safe by upskilling ourselves. And the tasks which are being replaced are largely the ones that are repetitive, and I use AI myself a lot. Imagine tomorrow, imagine a robot, an AI doing this webinar, right? There's a risk associated with that as well. So you don't need Manish, then an AI can do that, right? So there is a risk there, and we need to move away to higher skills if we don't want to get into that risk. Okay. Questions? I'll wait for a few seconds. Okay, while starting with repetitive tasks, there's one from Jose. Let me just read it out. Hello, Jose, by the way. Good to see you. While starting with repetitive tasks, would you foresee the highest value in non-repetitive tasks over time? Yes, in fact, I wouldn't say highest value at this stage. Sorry, the question is, while starting with repetitive tasks, yeah, would you foresee the highest value in non-repetitive tasks over time? Yes. So I can't say whether it's the highest value, but yes, the more you go into the spectrum of complexity, right, the more complex the task would eventually generate certain higher value. But I don't know exactly at this stage what would be the highest value for some of the non-repetitive tasks. Yeah. Christian, AI implementation different from any change management program? There are a lot of similarities. Thank you, Christian, for asking that. Good one. There are similarities, right? So we look at some of the technical aspects, right? And then there is a big part which is a people aspect of in the change, and that will be heavily involving the change management process, right from the fear that people have. And that's why I touched upon a softer aspects to it. So you could effectively use some of the processes, methods, and tools of change management program into implementation of AI as well. So there is an overlap there, definitely. The other one being purely the technical aspect of change management. There is certainly an overlap that I see. Okay. Okay, have any specifics, Carsten? There's a question from Carsten. Any specifics on how to get started? For instance, which AI service could be best used for forecasting? Yeah, so there are a few services out there. I'm not endorsing anyone. I can give you some examples that we use. That are there in the market. For example, a month ago, we had a case with Zycus, the company Zycus, which showcased their P2P processes. Then you have Risk Resilink or risk records, which can give you some elements of forecasting. Then you for every level you have Keelwar that can help you in strategic sourcing and so on. So there are plenty, in fact, to that field, and each of those procurement processes that we have seen, for each of these you would have different tools that are. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be endorsing anyone here, but there are a few out there. As an example that I said, there's CPO, which you can use for spend. There is Keelwar that I said. There is Resilink. There is Seal Works. There is Stamply for AP processing and so on, accounts payable processing and so on. So there are plenty, and each one has their specialty in each of these areas, for that matter. Okay, so that you can look up with a consultant who can tell you, based on your business model and the domain that you are in, the right kind of tool which you can use at every level, not only in forecasting but in every level. Okay. As the use cases grow, how could bias be managed? Yes, this is an important one. Thanks, Ash, for asking this. How could bias be managed? I gave you an example already of the Amazon case, right, where there was an input bias and which resulted in certain gender biases in the output. So this is a big part where you have the human inputs that get into it, and there's a big noise about it in terms of ethics that are there behind AI. I think it's a lot to do with training your human capital, training your human capital on, or human resources on, what kind of inputs are to be given to make it as unbiased as possible. Unfortunately, as human beings, we cannot escape from it 100%. I'm sorry to say that, but there might be a certain type of bias that could be involved. In fact, one other thing that I'm not seen a use case on that, but one other thing that could be used is using AI to give inputs to another AI, eliminating the bias rather than human inputs. So there have been developments in that. The training of people to eliminate those biases could be the biggest input that you could give, and eventually look at AI which could be unbiased to give an input to another AI that could be used. So there could be cases growing in that direction, I would say. But purely to manage the bias, it's largely about training your human capital to eliminate those kind of biases while providing inputs to AI. Having said that, there could be still issues, but over a period of time, hopefully there could be lesser. The other thing that I would say, again, it depends on the country, it depends on it depends on the region. There could be regulations that could be put in. There could be interventions of government and regulatory authorities, but I'm not I'm not here to talk about policy and so on and so forth. But there could be inputs from that angle as well, which could help eliminate some of the biases. Okay. Thank you. Spend Matters. Yes, so, Jose, you're right. Spend Matters has full of analytics of AI-oriented tools. It does, yeah. So you could look at their website as well. As I said, I cannot endorse here anything, unfortunately, but Spend Matters, you can look up Spend Matters as well. Okay. Sneha, please suggest top 3 most sought after skills in the next 5 years for purchasing supply chain professionals. So we do that. In fact, okay, now I won't endorse others, but I can also say that there are other EIPM webinars which talk exactly about what you asked, Sneha. Sneha asked, please suggest top 3 most sought after skills in the next 5 years for purchasing and procurement. And as we say this, I mean, the skills are largely moving towards human values and soft skills, looking at managing our suppliers, right? This morning in the webinar, I had someone who had asked me, how do I implement AI in supplier relationship management? So I picked up the word relationship and said, when we talk about relationship, there's a big element of human to it, right? So when we look at skill development in the next 5 years, I think a lot of skills are about creativity, are about relationship with suppliers, are about working on ideas of innovation, and so on and so forth. And once we have those, Those inputs can be provided into the AI to spit out certain expected outputs, let's say, but the skills are more and more towards softer skills because some of the simple, repetitive, technical, and operational tasks can be handled by AI. So the skills, to answer your question, Sneha, the skills that we are talking about are more and more human skills over the next 5 years. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you very much. I'll just wait for, there's one more maybe here. Just looking at the other chat. Yeah, we saw that. All right, so let's take a minute if anyone has any questions. If not, we are going to stop for the day. No. Eric, do you see any other questions on your side? I don't see questions here. Thank you very much, Ashish, for the acknowledgement. All right. If there are no more questions, I thank you very much for your time. Appreciate your 1 hour. Thank you for that. And hope to catch you in one of the other webinars or one of the other interactions that we have with that you'd have with the EIPM. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care then. Thank you.